I'm Loz Guest, and this evening I'm joined by Tobias Forge from Ghost. New album Impera is out now, album number 5. Can you say what's special to you about this record?
I'd say that I'm just happy that we've managed to make 5 records. Usually, when you start a band, you start writing as if your life were depending on it. And that's why usually debut albums are so interesting, because you've had years to write it. And then usually you end up having to start anew with the second one. And then every record feels in some way or form like the last. As soon as you're done with it, just like, oh, I don't know if I can ever come up with a new one. And now when you reach number 5, it's like, wow, we're still here. See how long it lasts.
Tell us about the album title Impera, and indeed the themes involved on the new record.
Well, in short, the title comes from the Latin saying or motto, I guess, divide et impera, which means to divide and conquer or rule. And so technically, impera means rule. For a long time, I was just referring to the album as the Imperial record. And I think I sort of dabbled with empire or imperial something. But then I liked the female sounding, kind of like Meliora sounds also female. So I've had a name like an Impera also sounds like a person almost.
And you're also picking the music here on Planet Rock for the next hour. And the first one you've chosen here is Foo Fighters and All My Life. Any particular reason why you've chosen this song?
Because it's such a mind-meltingly great track, but also such an amazing start to a very good album. If I don't remember falsely or wrongly, I remember that was the first single off of that album. And I think that sort of came before the album as well. So my memory of it was out of nowhere, seeing the video. And that was my first impression of that song and that album. And that video was so good because it was like a classic band on stage, but they sort of went through the entire stage production that a few months later, I went to see them in concert, and I understood that, the video was their entire stage show, but presented in 3 minutes, which was such a brilliant move. And I don't know if it's their biggest hit, but it's definitely one of their biggest and best songs.
So we are back with Tobias Forge from the band Ghost, choosing a whole bunch of tracks. Interesting choice up next, Killing Joke and Euphoria. Why this one?
One thing that really struck me, sort of reconnecting with the band a little. I heard this album and just like, wow, it's amazing how fresh and contemporary and cool Killing Joke's songs has always been alarming. They're always like warning for something that's about to happen just about right now. And there is an alarmism there that a few bands managed to uphold that eagerness over the course of, what is it now, 4 decades more, even is on their 5th decade. Insane. So Killing Joke is a really cool band, and I think that they prove that with their later records as well, that they are still very cool.
Back with Tobias from Ghost. Now, I know a fan of John Carpenter, and obviously, well, most people will probably know that you've also had a track in the recent Halloween film. How did that collaboration, that partnership come to be?
Basically, it started, I'm friends with one of the persons who works for the production company, who works for the production house called Blumhouse. And they make a lot of different films, but a lot of horror. And we were casually eating dinner, and he asked me, this was a few years ago, and he said, "How have you ever entertained making film music?" And I said, of course, as a writer, songwriter, as a film aficionado, I've of course, toyed with the idea, but I also have an enormous respect for the guild. You know, I have a few friends who work as film music composers, and they work really hard at what they do. It's not just something that you throw together in a minute. It's actually quite complicated, especially if you're talking about like big instrumental music. And he was like, well, no, I mean, that could be one thing, but maybe just do a song, or maybe just something and or collaborate with someone. I was like, yeah, of course. My problem is time, I think. And he said, well, how about this? How about you just write a song for a film? Just a song, like a normal rock song, kind of like The Man Behind the Mask or something. And I said, well, then if actually I do have a song that I think could fit, because obviously they had just done Halloween, the first Halloween film of their series. And I said that, well, I have a song I think that could fit into Halloween if you register in that one. And I basically had the first sort of seedling of a track that was going to be called Hunter's Moon, which felt very fitting. And then it grew from there. And so that was basically how that started.
Now, obviously, you are gathering acclaim for being quite the live band. I've seen you myself live, and it really is an amazing spectacle. And this next band you've chosen have carved out a similar reputation. You've gone with Rammstein.
Yes. Back then, I mean, they've ever since the beginning, obviously, they've been very known for their live show. And I think I knew about them in the 90s. I didn't really listen to them, I think. But when they made the Mutter album, that's where I sort of opened my eyes to them. And especially the song, Die Spieluhr.
So what is it specifically about the song you've chosen, Die Spieluhr? Sorry, I can't pronounce it. And what is it about this particular track that sort of, what made you choose it?
I like it. Most of the songs that I like of theirs, of Rammstein's, is the songs that have slightly more, as we say in the music writing business, top line heavy, meaning a little bit more poppy, when there's like a little bit more of a melody in the chorus or something that sort of, and if you listen to like a best of album by Rammstein, you always have that's usually the songs that sort of have taken them the farthest, I think. For some reason, the Spieler, it doesn't seem to be one of their sort of greatest evergreen hits, like Engel and all those songs, but which is to me mind blowing, because I think that's one of their best songs ever. But you know, I'm talking about the melodic songs as opposed to their very trademarked sort of rhythmical, more stabby songs. They have sort of a go-to sound that they most of their songs are similar in that sense, because they usually have a strong rhythm and a muscle. But I think that their most shining moments are when they explore the melodies, obviously with the combination of everything else that they have in mind. But that's where they really show their three-dimensional qualities. And I think that the Spielur is definitely like a great example of that.
And I think we'll just go straight into your next song choice, which is from Iron Maiden. And I'm assuming Maiden are a band that have been of massive influence to you over the years.
Absolutely. In both musically and also stage production wise, but also when it comes to work ethics and just the sheer volume of work you have to put into your job, basically in your craft, has always been inspiring to me. And when I was a kid, I was sitting with the Live After Death record, and I was already, even before I started playing absolutely before I started playing in the band, but even before I was playing music myself, I was dead set on wanting to become a professional musician and wanted to tour. I knew about the concept of touring, but a lot of my knowledge or my preconceived notions of what I thought touring was about was looking through Live After Death and seeing all those dates where they were playing everywhere. And I sat there with like a big map book and just like drew out how they toured and, where they played and how often you play. And that record has, in the inner sleeve, you have a lot of information about touring life. As with many bands from the 80s, they took a little, the 90s was a little bit medieval for a lot of the 80s bands. And I must say that after Bruce left, I wasn't a giant fan of the Blaze Bayley years, especially in the 90s. This is before our internet. This is before accessibility that way. You had to invest in your records, and you had to invest time into anything that you liked. And in 1995, when they made the first record with Blaze, I was so buried in death black metal stuff, and I was so busy exploring what happened in 1985 that I didn't have time for following that. And so, of course, I was one of the persons that got amazed when Bruce came back into the band, and they made this triumphant return. And I must say that Brave New World, the comeback record with Bruce, was and still is unbelievably well constructed record. They did like what a lot of bands did in the 90s and 2000s. All of a sudden, they went from 40-minute records because of the vinyl format sort of putting a certain limit to your record. And then when the CD age started, everybody started making a little bit too long records. And Brave New World, this is also like a 13-track record, which is usually doomed to fail. A lot of records got really bad after 1992 just because of the sheer volume of songs that came onto the record. But that record is actually really good from start to finish. Unbelievable. It's incredible that a band 20 years into their professional career, were able to still add songs to their already existing and mind-blowingly great repertoire, and out of such weight. I think that Blood Brothers is a song that they are still playing on most of their shows, but they could easily play 10 songs from that record.
The reaction from fans to the new music has been huge. Is that a massive source of pride for you? Is that rewarding?
Of course. I think a lot of artists that claim reactions doesn't mean anything, or that they don't worry about what anybody else is thinking, I simplify by saying they're lying. Of course, you're depending on some sort of reaction, kind of like a joker. You depend on the reaction to your joke. You want people to laugh. You want people to react. And I'm like that as well. I mean, there's a reason why, as an exhibitionist craving attention, you do things in order to get attention. What I like, even though it's not as flattering at all times, is also hearing the debates about the records you're making. And I know obviously that's something that's also an achievement, because 12 years ago when we had our first record out, there was a lot of talk about us being so polarizing. Then, just because of the hype surrounding the first record, there was obviously a lot of debate regarding the second record, when that was going to come, if it was going to live up to the same hype. And what we managed to do then was also creating a very polarizing record. And then that polarization just kept on swirling throughout every record. And now, still 12 years later, we've made a really polarizing record that you either love or hate. And it's a true pleasure knowing that we have still managed to do something that people talk about, because sooner or later in your career, if you're lucky enough to have a career and you have fans, there will come a point when only fans are interested in what you're doing, and people that aren't interested, they don't even care what you're doing. But people still seem to care, and that is a good thing.